Ready to move to the next level in your product career? I'm Shobit from Intentional Product Manager. Join me as we discuss ways to help you stand out in your job search and your career so you can have more impact and make more money. Everyone, please welcome my friend Shahid Hussain from Google. Shahid, great to have you on the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me and great to be here.
Shahid, why don't you begin by just telling us a bit about yourself and your career journey?
Sure thing. So currently I'm a group product manager at Google. I work on the Wear OS platform where I work on low power systems. Previous to this, I worked on the Google chat team. I'm the PM who killed Google Hangouts, if you remember that, or if you ever used it. I'm solidly to blame for killing it and moving people over to Google Chat, which is a more modern chat platform for Google and our users. Previous to that, I worked on Chromebooks. I was lucky to join in the early days of Chrome OS, where we just launched the Samsung Chromebook 3, which is really the first breakout product in that new category, and was sort of privileged to work on a number of key launches, growing the category, working with retailers, and then later on working with app developers as we brought the app platform, and specifically the Android platform, into Chrome OS to expand its capabilities. So that's all my Google career. That's about 11 years or so. Previous to that, I worked in VC. Previous to that, I worked for a startup called Wikia, or Fandom, I think it's now called. And previous to that, I worked in CPG. So I've hopped around a little bit from company to company. And currently at Google.
Thank you so much for sharing your journey. Awesome to have you here. And I don't know if you remember, we first met when you were at Wikia. I was in an MBA program and we did like a tech trek and you gave us a talk and I still remember that.
Well, it's very kind of you to remember. And that was a while ago, but we were really lucky. It was sort of the relatively early days of really scaled web properties like Wikia. Mm-hmm. And it's now like a significant web presence. You'll see like the banners on like Honest Trailers and areas like that. And we were able to grow that website to be a top 10 global site. Wow. So it was a great time, lots of innovation, lots of new ideas. And, we were really glad to have you there and it's done well.
Amazing. My kids love Honest Trailers, even the not so politically correct and foul language ones. And it's a lot of fun watching that. I've seen fandom appear in that. Let's talk about Google, because, there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstanding of various Google roles. So tell us your journey of becoming a Google Group Product Manager.
I actually recruited into Google in the marketing team. And I did that because at the time, I felt like that's where the greatest hole was. So I joined specifically to work on Chrome OS because the very first time I picked up a Chromebook, I was like, wow, this is the solution to most people's problems who use laptops. Because people like you and I, we kind of aggressively use our laptops. We might be doing development on them, might be doing like media on them. But most people, they just will, log onto their email, check Facebook, and that's pretty much what they need. And Chrome OS is great at that. And I felt at the time like more people needed to know. And so that's why I joined in that role. I was very lucky to join a very strong team of marketers and be with them in some of the first kind of growth moments of Chrome OS. But after 2-3 years or so, I realized pretty quickly that my skill set and my interests lay much closer to product than in marketing. I like working on brand. I have a reasonable understanding of it, but nonetheless, I like building stuff and I like shipping it. And I like having the scope that includes the strategy of what we do in the first place. So I was able to convert over, do what's at Google called a ladder transfer from marketing to product with the support of my manager and my peers, and have been in product ever since.
Got it. And then you transferred, you sort of grew into the group PM role. It seems like you also did various stints in various groups at Google. You mentioned Chrome OS, Wear OS, and whatnot. Since we're trying to demystify this role, I hate to ask the day-to-day because there's just like no typical day-to-day in a product management, but maybe like if you look at your core responsibilities and the core teams that you work with, could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes. And I think in giving you that answer, I'm going to sort of take a little sidetrack as well. I am lucky in that I've had experience working in product in startups, Fandom, and in product working at a large company, which is Google. What I want to make clear to folk who are listening is that they're pretty different roles. The label's the same. They both say product manager on the side, but the work is pretty different. Inside a startup, it's just like launch or die. You have no choice but to move quickly, and you have every capability to move quickly. No one's doing the work because there aren't enough people and there's too much work, and all you got to do is pick it up. The only constraint really is your own time and your own bandwidth and how much of yourself and your passion you want to put into the work. Now, of course, you're going to have similar questions of strategy and so on, but nonetheless, the constraint at larger companies is very different. And I'll give you kind of an example, which is, let's say I want to launch a product or a feature inside a product at a large company like Google and many, many others. In order to do that, I will very likely need the support of multiple peer teams in order to do it. I have in my role, let's say, in this example, like an OKR or a directive or a goal that our larger team has, and I'm trying to fulfill that goal. But the 5 other teams that I need to actually execute on my plan don't have that goal. And so I need to go and persuade them, hey, can you give me some of your time to help me get done what I need to do? And that's hard because they're trying to do the exact same thing. Their leads and their managers are saying, okay, we want you to hit this goal. And of course, we're all time constrained. Like we all would like to be able to do, would like more time to be able to do more. So for anyone to say, okay, I'm going to section off like some percentage of my time, some percentage of my available resource to help you do this thing, peer, that's really hard. And so you get into this place where as a PM, your value is pretty tied down to your closely tied to your reputation among your peers and your ability to scratch each other's backs when you need to. So if someone else needs something, okay, I recognize it'll cost me some time, but I'm going to help you. And I'll do it because that I recognize that although that may be not directly what I should be doing right now, it'll help everybody. And in the long run, if I need something, I'm going to ask. And it's not directly like I'm going to pay a favor, get a favor back. It is, we need to have a shared belief that we aren't always going to be doing what contributes to our direct goals 100% of the time. Because if we do, everyone's just going to get stuck. So to loop back to your question around what does the day-to-day look like? It's a lot of relationship building in order to form the base that helps us get things done. I'd also say that if I had to pick a core key skill that PMs need to have at senior levels, it's communication. We need to be able to form clearly a story around why we're proposing we're doing what we're doing for everything, from the broad strategy, which needs to survive 10 exec meetings, to small feature decisions where there's some exec that has a particular point of view in it. I need to be able to express your point of view in a convincing way. In every case, that communication needs to be crisp. It needs to be clear. And without that, it's impossible to get anything done. So the day-to-day, my calendar is just full of meetings. I occasionally, very occasionally ship CLs, but most of what I do is I sit in meetings and I talk with people and I am telling a hopefully convincing story about why I want to do what I want to do. And the other thing that I end up doing in those meetings that I sit in day-to-day is apply product sense for sure. That's something that you don't lose the need for, I think. And secondly, applying common sense. Everyone in large teams, they all have good reasons why they're doing what they're doing. No one's crazy. No one's like mean or doing something that's like bad. I've been very, very lucky at Google that way. And I think Google in general is filled with people who are like decent people who are trying to do the best they can. But nonetheless, when you get large teams of people which want to work together, people have their own incentives. They have their own things that they need to do. And when those people get together to try to pull together a plan across those teams or even inside a team, sometimes those different incentives can combine to make an overall plan that doesn't quite make sense. And so as a PM and as someone who's a little more on the senior side, our job, I see it, is to recognize when that situation happens and stop it. The nice thing about it is most people know that it's happening. Like once you say like, yeah, wait, that seems weird. Why are we doing this? Why not do it this way? Most people that we work with, they're very reasonable and they're like, okay, no, you're right. We all know why we got into that situation that we did, but yeah, that was weird and we'll switch over. So sometimes it takes some convincing, but mostly it's just the recognizing when that situation occurs and fixing it. And so that's what happens in the meetings that my calendar is full of day to day.
I loved how you sort of used the theory of constraints. Of the constraint there was pure being able to execute, while here it's alignment and communication and making your case and building alliances. What does your team look like? Group PMs, I assume, like certain product managers oversee certain areas, and how does that work at Google?
I'm sure you're familiar with the leveling system at Google. Group PMs are level 7s, and at 7, a number of L7s are ICs and a number of L7s are managers. If you're a manager, then your remit's fairly clear. Your job is to find ways to enable the team to execute as best they can. If you're an IC at that level, you usually have a remit which is complex, and your job is to make sure that the wheels keep turning. So most PMs will either enter via the APM system, which you're probably also familiar with. So they'll enter at an L3, I think, and then go up from that point. L3s, L4s are more on the junior side, but nonetheless, good. L5s and 6s, their role is about flawless execution. So at that level, especially at L6, you have a product and you're expected to just be able to ship it, no questions asked. Now, increasingly, as Google gets more complex in order to take on more challenges, being able to ship anything means needing to work cross-functionally. Mm-hmm. And so from 5 to 6 to 7, that's where that challenge becomes more and more present. So at 5 and 6, it's just, mostly here's a product, make it work. And then when you get to 7, it's this is a really complex mess and you need to unwind it and make that work.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot more ambiguity that starts to come in and a lot more alignment that comes in as you go to that level.
Yes. And I think at 7, you have to be seen as a leader by the team in order to make it to that level.
Yeah, you already answered a question I might have asked you, which was around different competencies at different levels. And I see that playing out. So if somebody externally is trying to come into Google as a group PM around that level, what would be your advice to them, both from a perspective of being able to prove that they can do the job and then ultimately succeeding over there?
So at this level, I think I have and do interviewing at Google. So I've been lucky to see a lot of people coming in, and I'll go sort of point by point. First thing, good candidates have to do the basics. I have seen candidates who come in who aren't that familiar with our products, or don't know how the revenue model works, or in tech interviewing, there's a fairly set framework for how that works at this point. And they're just not super familiar with it, and they end up kind of going off in a strange direction. Those frameworks can be constraining, but their purpose is to prevent that exact problem. So I would say that the basics need to be done. So that's the basic parts. I would say though, at the more senior levels, good candidates need to be able to demonstrate that they have shipped complex products and they understand the kinds of key constraints that PMs have at this level. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're working with an engineering lead, and the engineering lead has proposed a design which is kind of more on the complex side. And you maybe have a suspicion that the reason for that is because in order to get promoted through the tech ladder, you need to demonstrate eng complexity. Makes sense, because only good engineers can ship complex products. And sometimes we do need to be able to ship complex products in order to solve the kinds of problems we need to solve. But then sometimes the complexity is not really needed. You need a degree of technical capability in order to spot or at least suspect when that's happening, but also familiarity with problems like that. If you've had an instance like that in your past career where that's happened, talk about it. We'd love to know. And we'd love to know that you can handle the kinds of problems that PMs at this level at companies like this, large companies, deal with. So as always, demonstrate you can do the job before you do the job.
It seems that the basics like product design and how do you measure by metrics and execution, those combined with just showcase you've solved the similar kinds of problems. And then how do they succeed once they're there? As a last question.
Yeah, I would say it's about building a community of peers who know and respect you across engineering, PM, UX, and other areas too, marketing or PGMs and TPGMs, who are fantastic, by the way. There are so many people that PMs wouldn't be able to do anything without, especially at large companies, because we need specialists in a number of these areas to get through everything. Like PMs, I think often are like, we're like the one size fits all. If there's any hole anywhere, we should be able to plug it because we can like be TLs for a bit, or be like PGMs for a bit, or be marketers for a bit. And I think that's very reasonable. Like a good PM is flexible in that way. But we also need to build support from everyone around us to make sure that the product can ship. So I think it's a lot of relationship building, a lot of sharpening of those communication skills, a lot of getting to know leadership and what they really care about, what they really want. I think we spend a lot of time, thinking about, okay, well, this lead came in, or this lead is heading out. How does that change the strategy? And the more we know those people, the more we have a good like mental model for what they're going to do and why, the better we are at our jobs.
Shahid, thank you so much for this awesome interview. Really appreciate you sharing your insights. This role often gets confusing, different levels get confusing. So you shedding light on this would be also very useful for our listeners.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, be sure to check out our website at intentionalproductmanager.com to see how you can level up in your career.